Hello, everybody. So I guess I would like to, just for a few minutes, maybe take about 3 comments if anybody had one from the time before. If there's anything, like Joni was just sharing, anything that you took away and practiced from the last time, those of you who were there. Nothing. Okay. All right. We'll just keep moving. So one of the things that last time what we were talking about was learning to listen to oneself, listen to when emotion came up in the body, and to learn to be in touch with that and to not be its servant. I mean, pardon me, but to not squish it up and make it be, make it go away, but to listen to it so that we can move through things. And we were talking about that mostly in the context of some of the difficult feelings that are coming up for everyone right now, particularly if you're of a dominant culture and are feeling like you're part of the problem. Right now, we're looking to be able to look at what comes up for us so as to sit through maybe hearing some difficult things. And so that comes to the notion of listening in general. So listening to other people and being able to sit through discomfort, to sit through that silently by having untriggered oneself. So to be able to listen to oneself and to calm down any hyper reactions that come up. That was what we talked about last time. And that was within oneself. So now looking at listening to someone else, and particularly if they may be saying something that may be triggering for us, we may disagree with, we might want to defend ourselves against, we may think, they're just totally wrong and need to be somehow verbally annihilated. So when we're looking at the notion of listening, there's first the getting in touch with one's own triggers, but then of being able to be totally present to this other person without our own mind noise and triggers coming up to interfere. And so there's 2 words, there's 2 concepts or practices there that help. And I'm going to walk you through some mental and somatic imaginings in a bit. But the 2 words are silence and opening. So when we're listening to somebody, and it doesn't have to be somebody that, we don't have to look at on the political arena. We can just look at the people in our own lives who we're often too busy to truly listen to. We're often in so many other places, or we got so much in our head that we're kind of, or we get into talking to them and they say something and they go, oh yeah, I had an experience like that. And then we take the conversation away from them. And so when I teach listening, a longer process, and we're actually, I believe, going to have a 2-hour session or two 2-hour-long sessions coming up. So this is more like a taster today. So when we are, where I even lost my thought. So when we're talking about just listening to anybody and learning how to become present and to be silent and open to them when they come to us. And it could be our children, it could be our partner, a dear friend who we've heard over and over again. Why doesn't she stop this? Doesn't she ever get the point? When's she going to learn, etc. So what we want to do, the first point in listening, is to be able to be silent and open. And silence is something that in the Western culture, we tend to be pretty uncomfortable with. And I think it's because, and I've really tried to look at this, it's because silence is a very intimate space. And the beauty about silence is that it puts us often, when we stop talking and we get silent, it puts us in the now, in the moment right now. And silence is where we connect deeply with one another. There's no words, There's no mind chat, or there usually is, but if we get into silence, we can really feel one another. And not only do we feel the connection with the other person, but we also become now and drop into this well of compassion. And often, if we are trying to figure something out, if we're the speaker and someone offers us silence, witnessed silence, we can often drop into our own wisdom. I sometimes say that when we offer someone silence and not keep asking questions or saying our story, when we offer someone else silence, that is often where they can do the deep dive into their heart or into the seat of their own wisdom and come up with a pearl. Oh my gosh, I just got it. I know exactly what I'm going to do. And they'll say, thank you for that advice. And you didn't give them any advice. You just listened them into their own wisdom. So we are also, when we're in conversations, we're quite often waiting. We're inquisitive, we're listening for where's the part to jump in, we're listening for the part that we know about, where we have a story, we're listening for comparison, we're listening to argue, we're listening to the part that relates to that we can identify with. Instead, and it's a kind of hunching in and tightness around that. And what I'm going to have us experience a little bit of today is being open and present and silent to another person without the narrowing in, without that kind of constriction around listening that we so often have. So we're going to be looking at being both silent and open with another person. Does anybody at this point have anything you want to ask before we move into an exercise? Okay, all right. So the practice, the physical practice of deep listening is utilizing the breath. And I have a feeling that there's been a whole lot of practice with breath in here. But the breath, especially breath into the belly, which we're going to just touch on now, that calms us down. Breath into the belly centers us. It gets us in touch with the vagus nerve. I don't know if you studied all that stuff, and then calms down the brain, the center of the brain. There's all sorts of fancy little things, thalamus and medulla oblongatas, and then the hippocampus, all those wonderful things. And then our frontal neocortex gets lit up, and suddenly we're in Zen brain. So when we breathe into our bellies, we calm ourselves down and we get centered. We create endorphins. Just on the side, just conversely, when we breathe into our chest, which is what we tend to get habituated to when we're stressed out, we create adrenaline in our bodies. So what we want to do is, and right now, let's just take a few moments to get in touch with our belly breath. And this is exactly what mothers, from at least my mother, told me not to do, which was to stick out my stomach, but that is what we want to do to actually breathe well. And so I'm going to invite you right now to maybe put your fingers like this on your stomach and just kind of like this, so that when you breathe, it just comes apart a little bit, okay? And just practice just breathing into the belly and inhaling on 4, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then exhaling on 6, so that there's more exhale than inhale. So just right now, just do 3 rotations of those breaths into your belly, just kind of trying to separate your fingers a little bit. And I'm just going to give you that time. So this breath into our bellies, imagine someone comes to you and says, "Oh, I am so mad," or "Mom, guess what happened today?" or "You wouldn't believe what happened." Those are all cues to listen in a special, focused way. And if we choose, we can actually stop what we're doing, turn off the mind noise, put down the phone, put down the ladle, whatever it is we're playing, we're put down the laptop, whatever it is we're working with, and turn and become focused. And one of the ways to shift gears from having been in one place and into being present is to practice using the breath. So just to take a quiet, just tiny little breath and refocus and become present. Now, I'm going to lead us through a little exercise, presencing exercise that is trying to, in our very American way, do a shortcut to what all the Zen Buddhist monks do in their monasteries for 30 years to try and become focused and present. And we're going to try to do this in the next few minutes here. So no high expectations here. So, but it helps if you practice. And one of the things I learned to get present, to learn to get present, is to just take, and I actually learned this from, Eckhart Tolle, just a little exercise here. To just take something in the room, and I invite you to look around the room that you're in, and just take something small, something that, a little square, no bigger than about 3 inches square. Could be a spot of, a scratch on the wall. It could be an intersection on the floor. It could be a dapple of light. It could be a leaf pattern. Could be just whatever. It doesn't need to be anything, but just choose a focus. And in the next few minutes, we're going to be using the breath every time the mind wants to get noisy. The mind is always noisy. It's a matter of whether we pay attention. So using the breath to separate from the noisy mind and to sort of sink below, almost seeing the noisy mind as the flotsam and jetsam on the surface, and we're just going to sink below and let all that noise be there without drowning. So just find that focus, find that place that I asked you to find, and we're going to use the breath. And here's another one. Unless you have bursitis or some really bad arms, I'm going to invite you to put your arms up with your hands out to your side, up on it, making your body a T. And those are really to keep the little monkey mind focused. So the arms are up, and you're looking at this little place, this 3-inch square, with very soft eyes. You're just looking at it as if it's an artwork, as if it's something abstract. It doesn't have a purpose, but to keep your focus. And for about a minute, we're going to keep our arms up. We're going to use the breath to focus the mind when it wants to say, "Oh, my arms hurt. This is really stupid. Why am I doing this?" Or to try to translate, or to try to think about the future or the past. And just be looking at that thing in front of you and using the breath to center you. So just inhaling into your stomach, exhaling, and keeping the arms up, and I'll help you take them down. For about 40 more seconds. And now on an inhale, keeping the arms up, on an inhale, and then on the exhale, bring your arms pointing toward the thing that you're looking at. And say inside your mind, "I can come back to this place anytime." And inhale again. Then on the exhale, take your arms down and keep looking at that spot with soft eyes. And just check in with yourself and see how you feel. I mean, this is a quick exercise, but just see if there's been any shift inside of you. And often people will say that they feel centered or they feel calm. And you may feel present, relaxed, maybe sleepy, and maybe now, maybe in the present. So imagine right now if someone were to say, hey, I have this really cool thing that's happening, or I don't know what I'm going to do, or you wouldn't believe what happened today. If someone were to come and be in front of you and you had been able to get centered using your breath and your focus, how would you be toward them? How would you feel? How would you be disposed toward them right now? And if anybody wants to say how you feel you would be toward somebody, you can share, you can turn off your, or can they turn off their mute?
Absolutely, you can say something here.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you got that present, and if anybody was able to, what experience did you have with that? Because we are trying to do this in a quick hour-long or a half-hour-long thing, but any experience that you just had just now trying to just look at something and get present?
Yeah, I felt very focused.
Focused.
Lois, do you want to say?
Very calm.
Very calm. Mm-hmm.
And also, I was surprised how busy my mind is. When I tried to quiet it down, I would catch myself thinking of something else. I didn't know I was so busy like that. So it's I'm more aware.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Yeah, so we have a busy mind. And so when we listen to somebody, when we decide to listen deeply and become present, we're actually giving ourselves a gift. I actually think somebody wants to talk to me. I go, oh, good, I get to relax. I get to be present. It's a gift to me as a listener. So now we're not going to go into breakout rooms. If I were teaching, when we do the class later, the fuller class, we will have breakout rooms where you can practice with one another. But imagine being present like that to another person, to being able to shift the gears and not have the mind noise going still while they're talking and there's all this noise. Imagine learning to just take a breath and shift gears and become present. And one of the things you can do throughout the day, here's some homework, is as you're going through your busy day, you can just see the weed poking through the sidewalk, or you can see the dapple of the leaf on the reflection on the wall, or whatever it is, some object. You can just take a moment, focus, take a breath, and calm down. You can even, if you want, set an app or something to tell you that throughout the day to just look at something, focus, take a breath. And it's a wonderful practice. I right now, anytime, I've managed to get myself so that anytime I can actually focus with somebody and be present. So now I want to talk about that term, that notion of openness. And we tend to often listen in a constricted way, almost as if we're going to take a test or as if it's a competition. Instead of that this is an open, that we are here to be a yin receptor. And not always, but what the purpose of this exercise, this little half an hour, is to look at how do we be the receiver? How do we be a listener for somebody? And there's kind of a yang kind of listening, which is, yeah, I know all about that. Do you want me to call somebody? I know exactly how you can fix that. Oh, you know what? You think that's bad. You know what happened to me when I was 6, and suddenly our story comes out. Or all sorts of things. We tend to be in this yang aggressive way a lot of times in our conversations. And so I'm inviting you into a more yin mode here, into being the receptor. And so often I want you to just imagine this. I thought, how could I teach you this quickly? And I had an experience last week. You know how much rain we were having. I was desperate to get some things done in the garden. And I went out during a break, and in a break in the rain, and I was out there and I was busy trying to get things done. And all of a sudden it started raining. And I found myself it's raining, covering up, my whole body clenched down. And I started to run toward the house, and I went, Mars, this is a beautiful spring rain. Let's enjoy this. And I stopped, and I just opened my face like turkeys aren't supposed to. And I just put my face, felt the raindrops, felt the rain on my body, and just sat there and got rained on and enjoyed it immensely. And so that, I want you, just for a moment, if you can imagine, you're outside and it's not raining, and then all of a sudden it rains. Imagine that constriction you almost immediately feel in your body. Just feel that, it's raining. I got to cover up. I got to run. And now imagine telling yourself, no, I'm going to open. I want to experience this. I just want to take this in. I just want to listen. I just want to hear you. I want to be present for you. What's going on? Imagine shifting out of being yang, constricted, and into an open and silent place. So your friend wants to say something, or your child, just be silent, move back, become the bowl that holds their story, and just be present to them. So that's basically the little piece that we're going to learn today. And I want to open this up. We have 5 minutes. If there's any questions that you have, this was a quick lesson with a huge concepts, but I welcome questions or comments, experiences.
Well, I would say, Marcy, that I have been more present during this time of COVID than I have in the past. And I think it's purely because I have more time. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, for strategies, I love, that being expansive and being the yin receptor. But when we get back into our busy lives, that's really hard. I mean, what is the tool then to use the silent practice to come back?
Yeah, just throughout the day to just catch yourself and just go, oh, I'm busy, and realizing your head is busy and doing all this stuff. Give yourself a break. Just stop. Find something to focus on. Take the breath into the belly and just look at it. I mean, I remember when I was teaching college, it became a joke. My students would see me stop on the sidewalk in between classes, and I'm staring at literally a weed coming up in the sidewalk, just taking a moment to break set from one class going into another. So that's how I started developing that practice. Just practice when you're not having to listen.
Thank you.
Practice to listen to yourself. Yeah.
I guess for me, it's really hard to imagine if someone is saying something inflammatory that you find inflammatory. Like, I get the taking a breath, but if it's a dialogue and you try to so say you take the breath, you're in a pretty good place, you explain your position. I guess this just takes practice. It's really hard to imagine the scenario of if it's a continual back and forth or someone is being inflammatory. Like, how can you stay engaged in it without having your cortisone go off the charts?
Well, I guess it all depends on if you're being abused. I would not say stay there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that this is the panacea for everything. And there are times to speak up. Having been a mediator for 25 years, I find that I can usually calm it down and neutralize it, but sometimes I get triggered. I think that, as I was saying last week, that you can say, that's really impacting me, and I need to take a moment here and so that I can be present and hear what's going on. But I think there's almost, if somebody's saying something to me that I find really egregious, that's especially when I have to go into receptive mode and say, I want to connect with this person as a human being. This is just concepts in their head. It's just noise in a head. And I want to understand the human being who thinks that thought. And that's, we're talking a little deeper down the road, you know, but I want to understand that person who thinks that thought.
That's a great perspective. Thank you.
Anything else?
Marcy, I have a question. I'm a chronic interrupter. It's one of my biggest faults. And I wonder if either of these two practices could be helpful in working through that.
Absolutely. You're talking about a habit to limit. And one of the things is to maybe for a week go through trying to be silent. Say, I'm going to be silent more often this week. I'm just going to make that decision. So it's a positive thing. I'm going to be silent instead of don't interrupt, be silent and be in my yin place. But when one does interrupt, because we all have our habits, to be able to do what John Gottman calls a repair. And that is to say, you know, I just interrupted you. I'm trying to do less of that. Go on. You were saying. And give it back to them, because often when we interrupt somebody, we interrupt their mind train, and they can't think. We've interrupted their train of thought. And that is why, it's another reason why when we want to be silent and open and present, what we do is give somebody the gift of their own journey in their mind, instead of having to constantly negotiate how we think into it. We give them the gift of their own synaptic firings, their own chart in their heads. And that's the gift. That is really the beauty of an open, silent listening.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Or comments, anything that you want to say?
Thank you. That was excellent.